Well, from what I'm seeing, it looks like it's 6:30. Go ahead and call this meeting to order and ask that the roll be called, please.
Here.
Here.
Present.
Present. Thank you. Then move on to approval of agenda and addenda. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Heiser. Any additions or corrections to be made to that? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you. We'll then move on to approval of minutes from the ELEC committee meeting, November 3rd, 2016.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Rector. Additions, corrections to those? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you. That passes. Public participation, we have one, Scott Tess. I believe you're here to speak about the addendum, and just ask that you push the button right at the front to turn your microphone on. Just tell us who you are, and then.
Sure. Good evening. Thanks for having me. My name is Scott Tess. I'm the Environmental Sustainability Manager for the City of Urbana. And as some of you may know, last year, Urbana led a county-wide bulk solar purchase program. That is a competitively bid bulk purchase opportunity that we conducted. Limited time only, fixed price purchasing opportunity that's open to any household or business in our case in the county. It's a way to competitively drive down the price of solar power installations at residential and commercial buildings. We didn't create this type of program. It's been done many cities across the country. It's often referred to as Solarize. Our program was called Solar Urbana Champaign. Like I said, our market area was any building, any property in the county. We were the second city in the state of Illinois to run a program like this. Our program conducted 26 solar power hours, which are 1-hour educational events across the county. We educated hundreds of residents on the basics of solar energy installations, and as well as the purchasing opportunity, the competitively bid bulk purchase opportunity that we created. The program resulted in over 200 site assessments for solar energy systems, both commercial and residential, and it resulted in 81 contracts signed for solar installations throughout Champaign County, so Urbana, Champaign, Savoy, unincorporated. That total volume of or capacity of solar, as measured in what's called installed capacity, how much solar energy these systems could generate under ideal conditions, was 605 kilowatts of installed capacity. That number doesn't mean anything without context. So Chicago and some of the suburbs with them conducted a similar program about a year ahead of us. And their program resulted in 600 kilowatts of installed capacity. So population of a few million, population of 200,000, and we had about the same installed capacity. Talking briefly with folks at Ameren, I don't remember the numbers anymore, but I think we doubled the number of net metering accounts, which is essentially solar energy, behind the meter rooftop solar energy systems in Ameren's entire territory in Illinois. So very successful program. I'm here to talk about how we're going to do it again. We are making plans to run another round of this purchasing opportunity for 2017. And just as we did last year, we are going to be taking the Urbana Sustainability Advisory Commission and expanding it with a few other stakeholders. So stakeholders from other geographic areas besides City of Urbana. So we have some folks who live in Champaign, work for other agencies other than City of Urbana. They're going to come and be a part of a temporary Solar Urbana Champaign advisory group. We're going to have 2 meetings. The first is next week, January 10th, 7 p.m. at the Urbana City Council chambers. And at that meeting, we're going to review the request for proposal that our partner in this program, the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, has put together and will be bidding out. And subsequently, they're going to release that RFP that will competitively select one solar installer to be our official installer for our official bulk purchase program. And then we're going to have a second meeting, also utilizing the Sustainability Advisory Commission's normal meeting time and place, February 7th, again at the Urbana City Council chambers. And at that meeting, this expanded Solar Urbana Champaign Advisory Group is going to review the bids from the installers who are interested in providing service for our program. And at that point, we will they'll recommend a bidder to our partner, the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, and we'll select a bidder, and then subsequently we'll begin our another round of our educational events, Solar Power Hours. So it's a really powerful way to lower costs and to really expand education for solar in our area. Our program in the last round, based on what we think is a typical price for a solar installation, reduced cost 12%. Just by having this competitive bulk purchase nature. So what I have on offer for you all tonight is we're interested in bringing in a stakeholder that would represent unincorporated Champaign County. By represent, I mean nothing necessarily formal. It could be someone on this commission, it could be someone on another board or commission for the county, it could be just an interested resident that is interested in learning more about solar themselves and would like to participate. But anyone who's interested can contact me. Susan and John both have my contact information, and I'd be happy to talk with you more about it. The commitment is essentially to attend these 2 meetings, review the documents, make recommendations. That's the minimum commitment. Folks who want to stay on and support the promotions for this program throughout 2017, we would love to have that as well. Any questions?
We do have it on the agenda, so I was thinking if you're willing, Scott, to stick around so we can ask questions when we actually get to that action item. But thanks for your presentation thus far, because usually during public participation we don't interact. And since it is on the agenda, so we can ask questions then if that's fine. Thanks. Any other public participation? See, we have one other audience member. Do you care? Okay, just wanted to check. We'll then close that and move on to communications. Are there any communications need to be made from anyone? Seeing none, we will then move on to 7 for information only. We have the IEPA used tire collection for local governments in Champaign County, and Ms. Monty.
Well, it happened. We've been strung along for a year and a half, and finally it has happened. So pickups occurred this December. That's really all there is to report.
Any data? I was kind of going to ask, I heard Pius asking, and I was going to kind of even ask that if no one else did. Do you know of any numbers?
Well, I know that at the Champaign Township site, approximately 1,400 tires were collected of all different sizes, and it was quite a sight to see and visit. And I did provide a photo. I don't know if you can appreciate the ice coverage on that photo. But yeah, it happened. These are collected and shipped out of state to be incinerated for energy, these tires. It's a state-run program, and due to my constant contact with the program, Representative, I think that's one reason that Champaign County actually got it done in 2016. You can be really pesky with these calls. Thanks.
Ms. Petrie?
A couple of questions. Where do these go to be incinerated? That's number one. And number two, congratulations on the accomplishment for 2016. So will you have a similar accomplishment for 2017? No pressure, Susan.
I can put a bid in or a request in to cover Champaign County again. I know the township governments especially like this service, as do the public works departments. So, yeah, it's an easy call to make, and they know me. right now.
Okay, great, thanks.
Other
Where,
questions?
wait,
Oh,
where are
go
they
ahead, sorry.
burned? Where are they taken
You know,
and where do they generate energy?
I'm sorry, I don't have that to share today, but I'd be happy to shoot an email out. I talked to the contractor, and he did mention it. I didn't write it down, so I forgot it.
Well,
I want to say Alabama, but that seems so far, so maybe it was Arkansas. I know,
Alabama?
it's probably one state over somewhere, and I'm just remembering something with an A. So,
Sorry, I'm losing the environmental efficiency here
yeah,
mentally.
it was probably a next state over kind of thing. So I will find out and email you.
Mr. King?
Hi, Susan. Just had a question about, so it's 1,400 tires that were stored in that place. Is there like I've heard tires blowing up or incinerating, or is that a possibility with all of those stored in that area? Or is that something we shouldn't, I don't know, it's a thing to be worried about there?
That certainly is a concern, but not in these kinds of collections where they are laid out carefully and monitored and fenced. But yeah, it's not a concern usually with this small amount of tires. More of a concern might be pest management and water with mosquitoes.
Any other questions for Susan on this subject? Okay, thank you, Susan. We'll move on then to the addendum to B, the countywide bulk solar energy system purchasing program, Solar UC 2.0. And yes, Scott, if you would please join us, I believe there are some questions for you, but Susan, did you have anything that you wanted to say first that Scott didn't cover already?
No, Scott is our resident local expert on this program, so we're really happy that he was able to attend tonight.
Okay, thanks. Questions, comments, Ms. Petrie?
Yes, I have a couple of information questions. I know you can't nail down dates, but if, just generally speaking, after you have these meetings, and what was the date again in January? I missed that.
January 10th, it's
10th.
Tuesday next week.
Okay.
And February 7th.
I got that one. All right. And the choice of whoever wins the RFP. Then what will be the timeline and procedure for people to show their interest? I'm assuming part of the obligation is to attend the educational programs that are going to be offered. And then you did indicate to us that installation was reduced about 12%. However, for a 2,100 square foot roof covering that, do you have any idea or some ballpark idea of what the cost for the solar panels will be or were in the last round?
Every site's really unique. Different sites need different things. For instance, some folks need an upgraded or updated or new breaker box. It's an additional cost. Some folks have a particularly steep roof. That's an additional cost. So it's hard to generalize. If I could give you a typical house without giving square footage or anything, because that's going to give people the wrong idea, a typical installation might start out with, these are cash purchases from the installer. It might start out at, say, a $20,000 purchase. So there's a check going to the installer for $20,000. But the first thing you're going to take off of that is a 30% federal tax rebate. So come tax time, if you've got that much tax liability, you get 30% back on your taxes. Important to keep in mind there is if you don't have that much tax
Right.
liability in year one, you can roll over the balance to year two.
Okay.
So the next piece is the state has incentives for solar as well. And I think in very rough general terms, that was another 25% of the purchase price. The state's incentives get paid out they're measured on a per kilowatt of production of your actual system, and they get paid out quarterly over the course of 5 years. So there's another 25% of, say, $20,000 that you're getting back over 5 years. And then, well, even before we get to that 20% starting price, that's, as I mentioned, 12% lower than market. So that what we're really doing is we're stacking 3 different discounts onto the purchase of a solar array.
May I have a follow-up? Thank you very much. You said just ballpark or a range, 20,000 for installation. Does that include the purchase also or just installation?
When I say a purchase or an installation or a system, I'm talking about everything.
Everything.
You know, you
Okay.
sign on the dotted line, and you know when they walk away, it's turned on, and your power bill's lower because you're getting power off your own roof.
Okay, and then I would encourage the chair of ELUC, who is also an electrician, to maybe be part of that if he has time, because he has a knowledge base that he can, what?
My only thinking is we have a committee of the whole next week.
Oh, that's
For
true,
the
but
first
I'm
meeting.
just putting that out, all
Yeah.
right?
Well,
I
I
have the
understand.
degrees of freedom to do that,
I
thanks.
hear you, though. I understand that. Thanks. Other questions for Scott? Well, I've got it. Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick informational question. So after one of these systems installed, do you have any number off the top of your head of what the amortized cost of electricity is for kilowatt hour over the life of the system?
We don't measure the cost of the system in that sense because these are cash purchases rather than power purchase agreements where you're paying for a solar array on a per kilowatt basis. You're actually paying for a piece of equipment the same way you pay for, say, an air conditioner. And so it depends. Your savings are going to depend on what you're not spending on your power bill. General market expectations are that grid electricity increases in price on average over time 4% a year. I went back 5-10 years, something like that, on Ameren's historic pricing to check that, and it was 3.99, you know, the actual. So that's been our experience here. Hard to predict the future, but that's really what you're measuring against. Our installer for our first round would, you know, they know what the cost of electricity for which they're competing against is, and they provided in their proposal, you know, a cash flow analysis essentially for each individual homeowner, and so the homeowner would have in their hands, you know, here's the purchase price, and in 6, 7, 10 years, depending on the nature of the system and the roof and so forth, you hit your payback period. You know, you've recouped your bill savings have paid for, you know, the initial costs. That's kind of how we've tended to talk about it rather than a cents per kilowatt hour.
What's the expected life of the system itself? Is it around 25 years? Is that right?
So the panels themselves are all warranted for 25 years. The inverters, which is a little piece of equipment, is warranted for 10 years. Replacing an inverter, I think, is something like $1,000, $500. I'm not totally sure, but it's not a huge replacement cost. So you really have very, very minimal maintenance costs within those 25 years. After 25 years, obviously, if a panel breaks, stops producing, that's the property owner's problem. However, at year 25 plus 1 day, the panels don't all stop working. As soon as, like other equipment, electrical equipment or mechanical equipment, as soon as you install it, it has wear and tear. and it produces less efficiently, produces less electricity over its lifetime. When you hit 25 years, nothing changes. It just continues to produce less electricity. That's it. So these are going to keep producing for many years beyond that 25-year warranty. You may start having problems with one panel here or there after that, but it's warranted to that point.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Mr. King. You haven't spoken yet.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for coming. And I think I had two follow-up questions. The first one had to do with, I think you mentioned there was a RFP process, and I was just trying to see through the first RFP process, if you saw many minority and female business owners that do either the installation or the equipment purchase, or suppliers or something along those lines, if you saw many of those represented in the first purchase round. And then my second question had to do with if you could maybe describe where the bulk of the installation has occurred, like if there are specific parts of our county where you've seen most of the installations happen. So
Yeah, I'll answer the last question first. Urbana. Most of the contracts were signed in Urbana. I know that we had at least one in Savoy. I think there's at least one in unincorporated. One other incentive in the stack that I forgot to mention, in unincorporated, well, not in unincorporated, in USDA rural zones, there is an additional there are additional incentives. So through USDA, Rural Power for America, or some name like that. It is really, really, when you start stacking all those incentives plus USDA for USDA rural zones, and I think they have to be on ag-related properties, ag business-related properties, it becomes a really, really strong no-brainer. So for folks who have ag-related businesses in a USDA rural zone, you should definitely look at this. The other question. In our first round, we got 2 bids. We did not see any minority representation. One of the companies that bid was a local women-owned business. Interestingly, the recently passed Future Energy Jobs Bill in the state of Illinois has some carve-outs for low-income solar training, lots of really interesting things like that that are carved out, community solar. So there's going to be some opportunities in that realm there. And there's going to be probably a year of trailer bills and administrative rulemaking because it's a big new law that needs to be turned into programs. But that's something that we're going to be taking a look at. And if others are interested in those elements, I'm happy to talk about it more.
Ms. Petrie?
Okay, now I have 3 questions. Thanks to Robert. To build on Robert's question, do we actually know, are there many companies out there who are minority-run businesses? And I include women in the definition of minorities. So that pool, that large N, may not even exist, for one. Okay. 2, in this cost, warranty of 25 years. I know somebody in Urbana, your city, who considered this seriously and was not able to do it because when you have something you're going to put on your roof for 25 years, you're also adding the cost of re-roofing. And so we're talking about, depending on how many square feet of roofing, since I just did it, somewhere between another $8,000 to $10,000. And so when you give this number, I do hope, as part of the educational aspects, that that's part of the conversation, because you can't do it without re-roofing first. I mean, unless you've just re-roofed. Because you don't want to put it up there and then have to take it down in 10 years. That doesn't make sense, right?
I can respond to that.
Okay.
So in the solar power hours, every possible consideration you can imagine for installing solar, we cover that all in an hour.
Good.
And so one of the issues is the state of your roof. If your roof is going to need new shingles in 5 years, you're considered a less
Favorable
good,
customer.
a less good candidate for
Yeah.
solar, unless you're prepared to replace your roof.
Re-roof.
However, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means that whenever you need new shingles, you're going to have to uninstall those solar panels and reinstall them, and there's a cost to that.
That's right.
But what the general advice is that you want to have something close to that 25 years left on your roof. So I would say someone who installed a new roof 5 years ago and has 20 years left on the expected life is still a candidate, because just because there's a 25-year life expectancy on a roof doesn't mean at year 25 people are replacing that roof.
Correct. Okay, my last question is this. I'm a customer. I'm absolutely brilliant. I have every efficient appliance God put on this earth, and I have solar panels, and I have enough electricity. I can charge my 2 electric Lexis. Now, I have some left over. Is Ameren going to buy that from me?
Good question. Let me go back to your first one, too, before I forget it.
Okay.
I don't know is the answer. I don't know what the installer market looks like in Illinois.
Oh, way back to
Yes,
Robert's
yeah.
situation.
So
I mean, his question is a fair question, but I didn't want the onus to hang out there that wasn't what was happening in our community. But the reason it may not be happening is because there isn't a basket full of technical people who can do that quite yet.
Yeah, we advertise this bid through the Illinois Solar Energy Industry Association. So we presume that everybody's in the industry gets the bid, and we take it from there. And our partner in this, the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, they're the contractual lead. They're the entity that's actually going to release the bid and sign a contract for service with an installer. But yeah, we advertise it broad and wide to ensure as good a participation as we can get. Coming back to your last question, which is net metering. The rules in Illinois are set up so that you have 2 power plants essentially. If you have solar on your roof, you have 1 power plant on your roof, and you have another down the street that Ameren is bringing you electricity from. And it's run essentially like rollover minutes on your mobile phone. If this month your solar...
I don't get rollover minutes.
Oh, okay. If this month your solar array, over the course of a month, produces more electricity than your house uses, you pay nothing on electricity supply. You're still paying a meter fee and all the other taxes and charges, but you pay nothing on electricity supply portion of your bill, and you get a credit, kilowatt for kilowatt hour credit, on your bill that rolls over to the next month. So if you produce 10 kilowatts hours more this month and you use 10 kilowatt hours more than you produce next month, in month 3, you're even. So the question is, what happens if this carries on month to month to month? The rules are that on a 12-month period, and there's 2 different start and stop dates you can choose, on a 12-month period, you are net metered. You get a credit, kilowatt hour for kilowatt hour, that rolls over month to month. At the end of your 12-month period, you get brought back to 0. There's no cash out.
Other questions? Seeing none, I'll thank you again, Scott, for
Thank
the
you all.
information. Thanks for coming. Move on then to 8 items to be approved by ELUC. And if there's no objection, I'll take an omnibus motion for these first 3, since they're all basically the same.
So moved.
We have under A, the annual renewal of recreation and entertainment license. We have Gordyville Limited Liability Corporation, 2205 County Road 3000 North, Gifford, for the time frame of January 1st, 2017 to December 31st, 2017. We have Tin Cup RV Park Incorporated, 1715 East Tin Cup Road, Mahomet, again, December 1st, 2017 through or January 1st, 2017 through December 31st, 2017. And finally, Curtis Orchard, 3902 South Duncan Road, Champaign, January 1st, 2017 through 12/31, 2017. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Petrie. Seconded by Mr. Rector, or John first. Comments, questions on these? These are, as stated, just annual renewals that happen every year. They're pretty typical. And seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Oh, and just for those new items to be approved by ELUC, that does just happen out of the committee. This doesn't go to the board, so you won't see this again. So, move on then to B, the annual renewal of hotel motel license, of which we only have one in the county. The Harrium Incorporated, doing business as Motel 6, 1906 North Cunningham Avenue, Urbana, January 1st, 2017 through December 31st, 2017. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Heiser. All those or any discussion? Go ahead, Ms. Petrie.
I have an information question based on a conversation a couple of years ago at a board meeting, and it has to do with exactly how much does this one motel in the county generate in motel tax for the county?
I wouldn't be prepared to answer that right now, but I would be happy to take that question for research.
Okay. Well, I think it's basically
Yeah, I remember that discussion, Patsy, and you're right. It is minimal, and it was almost nothing was taken of it. But if I remember right, it was almost discussed that maybe we should just forget it for this one hotel, and however little it was. But that was then. So, but yeah, if you want, yeah, if Rick, if you I guess would look that up again. But any other comments, discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will then vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you. That passes. We will then move on to 9 items to be recommended to the county board. We have the proposed adjustment to final assurance for the California Ridge Wind Farm special use permit case 696-S-11. Is there such a motion? Moved by Ms. Petrie, seconded by Mr. Clemens. John can talk about this. John, do you have anything you want to say to begin with before any questions?
Just that this is happening a year later than it's supposed to, but it is happening nonetheless now finally, so that's good. We briefly reviewed this. The committee reviewed it back in October, and the wind farm operator is having to more than double the amount of money that they have set aside for financial assurance. So again, it's happening a year late, but at least it's happening. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, John. Any further discussion? Mr. Rector?
I'm sorry, you said I couldn't get through all that. It was cumbersome. So does it lower their funding now, or does it increase it? I didn't understand what you said, John. I'm sorry.
Well, it increases the amount. It more than doubles the amount of actual, of the letter of credit in case the wind farm has financial difficulties. And then not only does it increase the letter of credit, but also for the first 12 years, they're paying down that letter of credit and converting that to an escrow account. So there will be cold hard cash put in that escrow account, much more than they've been putting. And we get a statement every month on that escrow account, and so we know it's being put aside. And so this is an example of, I mean, the Champaign County ordinance is the most restrictive that I know of in this regards. That's because the county board wanted to be protected, fully protected. And we're kind of in a weak position because we've been trying to get this to happen for a year. Finally, it happened, and so that's a good thing. One thing this resolution will have in it, the state's attorney recommended, make it very clear when this is supposed to happen again, so we no longer have this confusion. And the resolution you'll see at the county board will specify that date, and that will be 3 years from now. So, you know, folks that are on this committee in 3 years, they'll see this at that time. And those who aren't, they can give me a call and make sure that it happens, because that's what we're there for, is to make sure this happens. But we really, can't bend any arms or break any knees. We can take them to court if we want, but that's generally not worth it. So it took a year, but it's happening.
Further discussion. Ms. Petrie.
Just a reminder and help for our new members of ELUC. What is happening in the industry that the cost for reclamation has gone up significantly? It's more than twofold.
Two things. The salvage value has gone down. The cost of construction in some ways has gone up. And it's it's a sizable hit, but the wind farm operator is he's already working on the new letter of credit. We may have that even before the county board meeting, but the resolution will require that to be submitted within a month after approval. So we'll make sure we get it.
Further discussion? Mr. King?
Yes, I couldn't remember your name, sorry, sir.
John.
John, within the proposal, is it solely about we're just talking the funding for the project or the principal or against the principal? Is there anything related to jobs that's built into this, or any assurances tied to anything?
Yeah, all this is in order to get approval, they had to post a letter of credit, which took into account everything we could think of that will be a cost at that time. And I think it's a very good letter of credit, well analyzed. It will be a huge undertaking if and when it's ever needed. We hope it's never needed. We hope that when these turbines wear out, new turbines will be put in place. So yeah, there's nothing really about jobs, but there will be a lot of jobs when that happens.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Move on to monthly reports. We have before us the reports for October 2016 and November 2016. Is there discussion, questions for John on those? Ms. Petrie?
Yeah, I have a couple of, they're more macro questions than specific questions. And that is, as I look at the total cases in October, you had 29 cases and then 16 completed, and then we go over to November, and you have 32 cases and 19 completed. That's a lot of cases for you all to be having to handle in a year. I'm showing my sensitivity to this workload. And I need to better understand, when I see 29 cases in October and I see 32, it's not clear how much gets passed over from month to month, so I can better understand if that is a really big jump for you all or not. And then you might speak to how this is impinging on all the other things we've imposed on you, the burn ordinance and the EMS 4. Okay.
Yeah, now the total cases completed are for the fiscal year. Total cases filed are for the fiscal year. So with the January monthly report, those will all start off at much lower numbers. The important number there are the cases pending, because that's the number. There's always cases pending. And I was doing my performance evaluation today, looking at the totals for the year. At the end of December, we had received 43 cases in 2016. The last time we received that many cases in a year was 2008. In fact, for a lot of the time between now and 2008, we were doing 20 to 25 cases. So this was a huge influx this year. Not so huge in the long run, but we haven't seen this many for a long time. Luckily, we have Susan Chavarria on staff as the senior planner, and Susan is doing great at keeping up with these cases, because some of these cases are very simple. They can be done in one meeting if we have everything ready. But there's a lot of these cases that have unique issues that need a lot of work, and there's always work to do in that regards. Now that the case is pending, I don't know what it was at the end of December. I think it was pretty close to 18, because we had an unusual December this year. We had 3 new cases received, and we didn't take action on anything. So actually, cases pending would be now back up at 21. But you see, for 2015, at the end of 2015, in November at least, we had almost the same number of cases, even though we'd only completed 19 cases rather than the 32, and we'd only received 23. Well, in 2015, Susan was able to pitch in on enforcement to a much greater extent than we had ever had a current planner pitch in. She was not able to do that this year because the number of zoning cases almost doubled on her. There was one last thing I wanted to say. So we're busy. At the same time, the number of zoning cases almost doubled. The number of zoning use permits increased remarkably. We had a huge year on fees just simply because we had so many zoning use permits. We haven't had as many zoning use permits as we had in 2016 since 2006. So we had almost twice as many zoning cases. That meant the minutes that our staff produces for all the ZBA minutes, there was a lot more minutes to turn over. There were a lot more memos to produce for all those greater cases. The same person that helps on minutes, that does the minutes, is involved in permitting. We also had a lot more permits to do this year. So your staff worked very hard this year. I know you would give them a great bonus if you could, but anyhow.
No, I'd hire you another staff.
That would be even better. We had a huge year. I don't know that it's going to continue. There is no way to predict these cases, but it has not slacked off yet.
All right, thank you.
Further discussion, questions for John? Mr. King?
John, the cleanup at the Pleasant Plains Manufactured Home Park, could you explain a little bit maybe what that entailed?
Well, the State Department of Public Health finally stepped in and had that place cleaned up, which is to say they had the mobile homes torn apart. There's still a lot of cleanup left to do, and luckily, the Attorney General has told us they're going to stick with this case until we're happy with the way the property looks, because it actually looks worse now than it ever has. But the owner is working away in his own way to try and get it cleaned up. So, it's not happening as fast as we would have liked. We've never actually been in a situation like this before, and we didn't see this coming, this situation that we have now, but they are continuing to work at it. The state is remaining involved. So my hope is that it's not going to happen next month. It's not going to happen in 2 months. But finally, by springtime, I hope this property looks better than it's looked in a long time. And hopefully by summer, there should be no sign of this former manufactured home park.
Anything else at this point in time for John? Seeing none, then we will place those on file. Other business, I have nothing. Is there any other business that needs to come before us? Chair's report. Other than just saying thanks for everyone coming out, and it's nice to see the full committee here on the first meeting of the new board term and on a cold January night. One thing I think we are missing, John, is designation of items to be placed. Oh, yep, I hadn't turned the page, forgot to turn the page. Designation of items to be placed on consent agenda, that would be, 9A. And after that, we're up for adjournment. Is there a motion? Moved by Mr. Rector, seconded by Mr. Patterson. We're adjourned. Thanks.